And so we want to think about our structural health as a long-term project, not just about fixing a sore spot in the moment. So if we first just have a little look at where is our postural alignment. So if I stood on the side here, and you can see through the ear, through the shoulder, through the hip and through the ankle, well, any distortion of that when the muscles aren't working are going to cause a lot of stress on all the musculoskeletal system. And also when it doesn't work properly, we can't breathe properly. So we need to be in the right position for the lungs to be able to work and drop down, and the diaphragm to pump and move all the organs, which keeps all our insides nice and healthy. So you can see here in my next picture, that's a little bit more close up. If you imagine that from the brain, we have like 1 million electrical wires that come down and run everything in our body, all the muscles, all the organs, all the cells, all the joints. So if there's collapse within the system, you can imagine if you were washing your car and you drive over a hose, and so that blocks all the nervous system. So when there's collapse in the body, there's a lot of block, and so people get things like RSIs, and all sorts of tension within their system that is just caused through blocked energy. So here you can see where the brain should be positioned properly and the nervous system can be positioned properly, and no tension on the whole nervous system and no tension on the upper neck, etc. So nice free flowing movement. That's where we can get full energy capacity to our body. So we don't want blocked energy just through poor positioning. In this little picture you can see this guy, he's the same guy, of course, and there he's standing up into a nice neutral spine position. So the air running through the shoulder, through the hip, and if you could see his feet, then that would be exactly where he would be. And then as he gets a little bit ager, with the weakening of the deep abdominal wall and the tummy, then he starts collapsing a little bit. And that just hanging on the joints and the collapse of the abdominal wall and the whole position of the head coming forward. So every inch that the head comes forward, it's the weight of your head again on all of this area. So an example of that is the ear should be over the shoulder, right? And every inch that it sits forward, okay, so if you've got a 3-inch forward head posture, which is quite normal, well, that's like 30 kilos hanging on that upper neck area. So I always get someone's finger and I pull on their finger like that, and you can feel that stress, and that's what it feels like in the upper back when you have that wrong position. And you can see as he gets older, he's not going to get any better unless he does something about his postural position. Right, so if we don't want to end up being in the Notre Dame family, or we don't want to end up having a frame, we want to keep our own frame really, really strong, okay? Because it's not much fun getting to an age and that you've got to have support to go out and do your groceries, or that you're not strong enough to get out of the bath or get up off the toilet, and all of these things that we don't even think about at this age that are going to get worse and worse and worse with lack of strength. Now this little picture I love, because pain actually affects everyone around us. When people are in discomfort, it affects everybody, and it's a classic example, and I see it all the time in families where someone's got a bad back or a neck, and everyone has to put up with that misery, and it's no fun at all, because you can't do things that you love to do, and when you have pain in your body, you are always conscious of that pain, so your energy is never really present with what you're doing. It's always there. So whether you're at work, whether you're at play, you're always hanging on that pain in your thoughts. Okay, so there's a few different types of postural position. Obviously neutral is where we want our body. That's where the axle of rotation is really strong. That's where the joints sit nice and easy with no pressure. Now when there is a wrong position with the body, so this is what we call a lordosis. Okay, and so that's where the pelvis is tipped forward. Now that's one set of muscle imbalances, okay, and so that means that there's real weakness in the lower tummy here, long hamstrings, really short and tight through here, and it's what we call a lower cross syndrome. Okay, then the other way, people go this way, and that's what we call a flat back position. So there's too much curvature in the upper spine, the lower spine gets very, very flat. So that's the opposite way. So it's really tight hamstrings and glutes and really weak and long through this front area. So if you're doing exercise and everyone's doing the same in an exercise class, just for example, well, this posture needs a very different set of exercises than this posture. So you can't be doing general work and expect the body to come back to neutral, because it just will never happen. So when we have imbalance, we have to do an imbalanced exercise program to ever get balance within our system. Another thing that we have to be aware of is, where are we sitting in our daily life? So how are we sitting at work? How are we sitting when we're around the house? How are we sitting in our car? Because even if you have a really, really good quality exercise program that's correcting your structure, then if you don't follow that through to other areas of your life, then you can never get better. So you have to place attention in all areas of life. So it is a bit of a job to start with, but it's very beneficial in the longer term. So mostly when people come to me and they tell me about their aches and pains, well, they say that they just bent over to pick up a loaf of bread, or they just put their suitcase in their car when they're going on holiday, or any little story like that, and so they've really hurt themselves. But in general, postural imbalance has been there for a very, very long time, and that's the straw that broke the camel's back. Okay, so they just bent over. That's not the start of the incident, it's just the straw that broke the camel's back, and then big troubles occur. So I always try and teach people that, don't wait till you break before you do something about it, because when all of these things are going on in your body, it's way better to address it before we have big troubles. So if you imagine that our body is just like a vehicle, okay, this is our vehicle that has to sustain us for the time that we're here on Earth. So we can choose to be in a really, really good mint vintage vehicle, or we can be in a new model, all beat up, banged up, and banged around and not looked after. So it's up to us how we choose to look after ourselves, and it's through learning really, really good skill, because where do we learn where our body should be in space? We don't learn it at school, we don't learn it at work. It's only something that you learn through specialty work, like the type of work that I do. So I'm a CHEK practitioner, corrective holistic exercise kinesiologist, so that's why I can look at bodies and I can see people's dysfunction very, very quickly, and also see what I need to do to get them back to good working function, as long as they do the work. You can see here, if people are nice and level through their shoulders, and they're nice and level through their hips, and they have a nice axle of rotation through here, then all the muscles are nice and even, and there's no stress on the system. We don't feel soreness and tightness and uncomfortable and backaches, etc., because everything's sitting where it should, and all the muscles are stabilizing the joints as they should. But if we have a little bit of muscular imbalance, so as you saw, one shoulder higher than the other, etc., so that causes like a little scoliosis in the spine, well, it has to counterbalance through the hip, right? And so there's a big torque up in the system. So here you can just an overview of what the core does. So it protects our internal organs, supports our spine, connects our upper and lower body, and it's also our foundation for movement. So if we're moving, if we're doing any sport or any good quality movement, if we don't know where our body is in space and it's not connected and it has muscular imbalance, well, we can't move properly. When you really understand how to use your body and you have really, really good quality movement, you know always where the axle of rotation is, and you know how to move things and pick up and bend things, but knowing how to move your body is really important. Otherwise, constantly people are hurting themselves. So when you have a weak core, you can imagine it like a crack in the wall, right? So that's how I see people, you know, when they have all this imbalance in their bodies, it's just like big cracks in the wall. So, or you can relate it to that you're only ever as strong as your weakest link. And so an accident waiting to happen, you know, people trip on the curb and put their neck out, you know, because their system is so ready for an accident because of where it's all sitting. And it's just no fun. So our body is like a tensegrity model. So like the Golden Gate Bridge, it's all hanging, and then it has tension pulling from all different areas to hold specific things in place. So if nothing changes, right? So how we do that is we do a full postural and orthopaedic assessment. So we measure up the whole system so we know what's going on. So we know what's weak, we know what's tight, we know what needs mobilizing, we know how to stabilize the system. So, and there has to be an order of importance, because once again, if you're strengthening without first loosening particular areas and getting the brain in tune and getting it back to a neutral spine position, then you're locking in. Okay, so getting the body into a good position, so mobilizing and stretching comes first, and postural awareness, then stability, then strength. And what I see people doing is a lot of power work. So they're doing all sorts of like aerobic classes, or jumping around, or running around playing sports. And we call that power exercise. So to be really good at a sport, you have to get strong from the inside out. Otherwise, once again, you're still an accident waiting to happen. Okay, so now with movement patterns, as you get strong, like probably a lot of people wouldn't perceive that they would do a deadlift, right? But a deadlift is something that we use every day. If you imagine that every time you pick something up, well, that's what we call a deadlift, right? And so how much do we bend over and pick something up? So if we have dysfunction in our body and weakness, and we're unaware of where our body is in space as we go to lift something, so we bend over just to lift a little box or something, and our body goes into its perceived position of strength. So if you haven't trained it into a strong position of having a good lumbar lordosis, being able to really get down and use the legs to lift, you're always going to hurt yourself as you lift things. And that's why people, when they're just going on holiday and they're going to lift their suitcase into the back of the trunk, and they end up hurting themselves, you know, just because they're not used to lifting, they're working in an office all the time, etc. And so, you know, they're hurting themselves and thinking that that is what did the hurting, but the accident has been waiting for a long, long time, and once again, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Another example is a squat. So we all squat every day. So when you sit down here and you get up, that's a squat, right? When you sit down on the toilet, that's a squat. So most people squat every day without thinking about it, getting in and out of your car, getting up and down at work, right? So if you have collapse in your body through weakness, and so the body is a little bit collapsed either this way or this way, then every time you squat, then everything collapses in. So it's only a matter of time before you get sore hips, sore knees, sore ankles, because it's a constant drop in and overuse of those movement patterns. So just like tyres wearing on the car, not if they wear out, when they wear out. And I have so many people that come to me who have been told that they need surgeries, rotator cuff surgeries, hip surgeries, knee surgeries, and as they get a little bit strong, there's no reason for them to have surgeries, because as the muscles strengthen and support the joints, it pulls everything back to the axis of rotation, and everything can work nicely instead of being forward and hitting and locking as it moves, which causes a lot of pain and dysfunction. Okay, so of course that's just a big overview to give you a little bit of an idea.